On this week's episode, I have a really interesting conversation with Steven Braekeveldt. Steven is originally from Belgium. He's been living in Portugal for the last 5 years. He's a history nut, a book author, and he's the CEO of Azores Portugal, one of Europe's biggest insurance companies. We discuss, amongst other things, food, wine, history, culture, what Steven loves about living in Portugal. Steven also speaks candidly about some of the things that Portugal can do better. And we speak mostly about how special the people in Portugal are. For those of you listening, head over to our YouTube channel to watch some of this episode. And for those of you watching, click down below and subscribe. And for the full episode of this podcast, go to Stitcher, Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. And now over to my conversation with Steven.
I'm Flemish, so that's from the Flemish part of Belgium, close to the sea. I'm part from a province which nobody understands my dialect. I mean, even on national TV, they have to put subtitles under what we say because it's such a strange dialect that nobody understands. I grew up amongst the farmer lands. I was always working on farms and milking cows, planting, helping the farmers, whatever. I was always very close to nature, so I became a nature guide and was always part of many associations of nature, looking for medicinal herbs, doing radiesthésie. I was secretary of the World Wildlife Fund, etc. It's always related with nature. And then started my studies. So I did, I think, 6 or 7 degrees because I love to learn. I just finished actually another degree. So I keep studying all my life, and that's, I think, very important. And then the first 10 years, I was a trader in derivatives and foreign exchange. I would call it the black period when you related it to Earth. So I was one of the guys destroying Earth during those 10 years. And then I moved to Hong Kong. Then I lived in Singapore. Then I lived in Mexico. And now I'm living in Portugal.
Steven, how did your relationship with Portugal begin? I mean, when was your first visit? What did you experience? What surprised you about Portugal on your first trips here? Tell us a little bit about that. You in Portugal, how it all started.
Well, your question, I can look upon it from 2 points of view.
Yes.
If you're asking when was your first trip to Portugal, I think that must have been somewhere in 86.
Okay.
Somewhere there, 87. It was still a very poor country. The women were still mostly all dressed in black. There were still a lot of donkeys all over. It was the place where Europe had not invested all the money in restructure. So I came a couple of times to Portugal in those periods. If you say from a more professional point of view, I became member of the board here in 1997, I think.
Okay.
Can I be 1997? No, it must be later. In 2007. Sorry, in 2007.
Okay.
I became member of the board in 2007. And so since then, I came 4 times a year to Portugal and even more for some meetings to follow up the business. So I was in the board of our JV of Millennium BCP. And then it got, and so then it extended, expanded. Then at a certain moment, our CEO left here in Portugal. And from a group perspective, they asked, we said, okay, who is going to replace him? We had some 10 names, and each time it was no. In the end, the CEO of our group said, well, Steve, as you're on the board since 2007 and you know everybody, why don't you go and temporarily take over the job and because I was responsible for Europe, Content Europe for our group. So why don't you do Content Europe out of Portugal instead of Brussels? So I came to Portugal, but then that temporary stayed up to now, because in the meantime, always opportunities to expand the business, to buy business. And so now actually the group has evolved to the second biggest insurance of Portugal. And they said, well, I mean, why don't you just stay now?
Yeah.
Which I'm happy to do.
Well, tell us why. I mean, why have you decided to stay for longer? What is it? I mean, I know for work and things, but what is it from a lifestyle point of view that you enjoy about living here and why you've decided to stay for longer?
Well, I think for people from abroad living in Portugal, at least that's my case, and like you, I traveled a lot all over. I think definitely for Europe, Portuguese people are the nicest people of Europe, in my opinion. They are the nicest, gentlest people in Europe, and not because of a hidden agenda. It's just part of their DNA. Whether you travel from north to south, from west to east, I mean, whatever. If there's something, they're always there with trying to help you with a smile, with a kind of always trying to support you, to be of help, and yeah, always with a smile, and that you don't find that in other countries anymore. I mean, I'm going to tell you something that happened the first couple of weeks I was here. It was raining. It was dark, and my car, the light was flashing, and I was parking under a bridge, and then kind of immediately 2-3 minutes later, a car parked in front of me. My first thought was, "Oh my God, I don't have a weapon." That was my first thought, because I thought, here I am in the dark, nobody around me. Immediately, a car is stopping. And actually, the only thing the guy was doing was, "Can I help you?"
Checking if you're okay.
Yeah, just assuring if I was okay, if he could be of support or helping. This is something which in most countries you don't find anymore. Not at all.
Yeah, the people make this place special.
The people are special. I think the light is fantastic.
The light?
The luminosity of living here. It's you have the Atlantic Ocean. And the light is quite energizing. The negative part is in 6 years I didn't put one foot in the sea, because everything which is below 28 degrees I don't enter. So as the water is so cold here, with I think it's the von Humboldt stream that passed by. For me it's so cold. I see all these kids and all the people swimming. But
is it colder than the water in Belgium?
I think it's even colder in the North Sea, yes.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So you will not find me swimming in the sea here.
Okay.
I'm known in the company. Actually, when Portuguese people want to visit something, they come to me and ask what should be visiting. Because if I'm here for a weekend, I travel all over the place. I go and visit. I mean, every place there is. I mean, I'm trying to visit, and I also ask, what is the most extraordinary place you visited that I have not visited? I will go and visit. So I accumulate these kind of visits and also histories, the history of, and so I'm very interested in what's happening all over the place. For example, in Mafra, as you mentioned, Mafra, it's the only place in the world where you can have a concerto with 6 organs. There are 6 organs.
That's right.
It's the only place in the world where you can listen to a concerto of 6 organs. And when I ask people, have you been listening there? No, I didn't know that. And it's unique. It's just unique. It's the only place. And so people come on a Sunday, the first Sunday of the month, they go there just to listen, because this is the only place in the world. So there are so many great things.
Yeah. You came here, you started coming to Portugal really, really early on. You talked about, I mean, when you first came to Portugal, the area that you're in now, where your offices are, didn't even exist. It was just this like rundown river area, and they've developed that with the Expo and with the Euro and all of that. But you were ahead of the curve. We now have a lot of, in the work that I do as a realtor, we've got a lot of Belgian clients that are coming to Portugal now and discovering Portugal. You saw it. You were ahead of the trend, ahead of the group. But I mean, what do you think, just as a Belgian person, a Flemish person, what do you think is it that people are so attracted to about this country? Why are they coming? What is it that they love so much about Portugal?
Well, it's easy to live. Huh? I mean, I can tell you, I lived in other countries. I think it's apart from the bureaucracy, but I think it's mostly because of the easiness that you have to live here. I mean, it's fantastic. Quality of life is great.
Yeah, can you unpack that a little bit, Steven? I mean, when we talk about quality of life and the easiness, how does that feel on a day-to-day way?
Well, I mean, you have all the infrastructure. Mostly, I would say, mostly the people you're talking about are not depending on public health care. They have private healthcare, and this is fantastically organized in Portugal. Most of the value of restaurants is not that expensive for these type of people who come to Portugal. It's not that expensive to eat or to enjoy a coffee or sit on a terrace or whatever. So there is a culture agenda in Lisbon and Porto, which is quite good, which is quite nice. So also from a cultural point of view, you can do a lot. And then you have this whole hinterland, which you can visit, which is just amazing and fantastic to visit, with a lot of infrastructure, a lot of lodgings, a lot of possibilities to stay in a quinta. So in that sense, it's fantastic. And look, it's December. Yesterday I was sitting with my windows completely open. It was 19 degrees. So I mean, it's fantastic.
Yeah. And the easiness of life, that kind of laid back atmosphere, the simplicity of things here. Can you comment about that? And just that feeling of being in Portugal and just feeling relaxed and feeling like things are easy.
Well, it's a difference in the working environment. We don't. I mean, we're not. I mean, the work is the work, but outside. Yes. I mean, I can also tell you that when I lived 5 years in Mexico, and everybody I met in Mexico immediately said, "Hombre, mi casa es tu casa, eh? Mi casa es tu casa." But honestly, I never saw a casa from a Mexican from the inside. So for 5 years, whoever you meet, it's immediately, "My house is your house, mi casa es tu casa, please come." But you're never invited. Here in Portugal, nobody says "mi casa es tu casa," but I was probably invited the most of times already to the private homes of Portuguese. In the weekends, we have a dinner, we have friends coming. Why don't you come? Why don't you join? And so again, the integration from foreigners in the country, people are looking actually with open arms towards different people, which in other countries is much less. And so again, this is part of that easiness to connect, to have friendships, to be part of a community, etc., etc. So it's quite easy to connect.
Can you recount an interesting story, a historical story that you've learned about or read in Portugal that you found truly fascinating?
Yes, and people. So I mean, firstly, I'm going to talk about the Azores.
Okay.
What people do not know is that the Azores were actually conquered by Flemish people, and so and for 3 centuries, before it was called Azores, it was called Islas Flamencas.
Huh.
Yeah, because it were Flemish mercenaries who occupied the Azores for the Portuguese king. And that's one of the reasons why in Pico, you still find so many families with Flemish names. And when I told the people here the story, they said, one of your stories, but then I went to Praça Camões. You know, Praça Camões, you have a kind of shop just at Praça Camões behind Pessoa. There is the statue of Pessoa. Then you have a shop with old books, old maps, old cards, and so I normally always go in once to have a look. And when I was looking through the maps, I saw a map printed by Mercator of the Azores, where it was still called Islas Flamencas. So I thought, no, I cannot let that here. So I bought the map and I brought it to the office also and saying, listen, I mean, you think I'm just making up stories, but here it is, right? Here is the map from Mercator, printed by Mercator, where it is put Islas Flamencas. And it's only after a while that the Portuguese king said, come on, I'm not going to continue to live with that name of Islas Flamencas. And he changes to the Azores. How about that story?
For now, I didn't know the Flemish actually occupied anything, so that's even more interesting. They're probably not in a rush to leave because it's beautiful, that island.
Yeah, they all stayed. I think they all were in love with the Portuguese women living there, and nobody went back happily. I mean, they all stayed. And actually, that has a big influence, but because there were about over 2,000 Flemish mercenaries, that has had a huge impact in the way they speak Portuguese.
What do you think Portuguese people should be proud of with their country? What do you think they should be proud about? What they should be proud about their country, Stephen?
think the fact that they can enjoy life. They really know how to enjoy life. And that's great.
Yeah.
They really are, they really like to have a cup of wine. They like to go to the beach. They like to be relaxed. They are in for normal relations, for a nice chat, for a conversation with somebody. So it's actually you feel always feel welcome. Always feel welcome. And I think this is something to be. I mean, if you ever lived in Brussels or in Belgium, where I come from, and that would impossible. I mean, people are. It's of course cold. It rains 250 days. You're not going to sit on the terrace when it rains. People are all busy with things, so there's never time for anything. But here, people still have a joy of life.
Finally, Steven, a question that we ask all of our guests.
Oops.
Portugal.
Yeah.
The simple life. Why?
I think simple life. Why is because of the people. For me, it's because of the people. Stones are stones. Sand is sand and sea is sea. The difference are the people. And I think Portugal is a simple life because of the people and the surroundings.
So thank you once again to Steven, and thank you to all of you for listening. Please subscribe, share with your friends, give us a thumbs up, and please leave a comment or a review. We always love to hear from you. Don't forget, Portugal The Simple Life also has a magazine. Download it. It's for free. And we'll be back next week with a brand new episode. And as we say in Portugal, saúde. Welcome to The Simple Life.